Have you ever stood on a beach and just wondered, why does this particular coast look the way it does? Why are some shorelines these dramatic rocky cliffs, while others are just miles and miles of soft, gentle sand? Well, you're standing at the edge of an epic, ongoing story, and today we're going to decode how it's all written. Okay, check this out. This is a perfect example. We're looking at the east coast of the US. Up north, you've got the rugged, jagged coast of Maine. Then you have the weird hook of Cape Cod, the enormous Chesapeake Bay, and then these long, thin barrier islands of the Outer Banks. I mean, it's all being hit by the same Atlantic Ocean, right? So what's going on here? And that really is the big question, isn't it? Why is there so much incredible variety? The answer, it turns out, is this constant dynamic tug-of-war between the land and the sea. It's a battle that's been raging for eons, and we're going to figure out exactly how it works. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the ocean's raw, endless energy. Then we'll see how that energy both carves away the coast and, believe it or not, builds brand new land. After that, we'll get into the unique story of each shoreline and wrap up with the biggest factor of all, the ever-changing waterline that redraws the entire map. All right, first things first, to understand any of this, you have to know about the forces at play. Think of them as these three tireless engines, constantly working on our coasts. You've got waves, you've got wind, and you've got the daily rhythm of the tides. These are the engines driving all the change. And these forces are all totally interconnected. It starts with wind blowing over the open ocean. That's what transfers energy into the water to create waves. Meanwhile, way out in space, the moon's gravity is pulling on our oceans, creating the slow, powerful rise and fall of the tides. This trio, working together, provides all the raw power. With all that energy, the ocean basically becomes a powerful artist, a sculptor. And its main tool? That's erosion, which is really just a fancy word for wearing away and breaking down the land. This is how you get some of the most stunning, most dramatic coastal features you could possibly imagine. So how does the ocean decide where to carve? Well, a key part of it is something called wave refraction. It's pretty cool. See, waves don't hit an irregular coast all at once. The parts that hit shallow water first slow down, which causes the whole wave to bend and wrap around anything sticking out, like a rocky headland. It's like using a magnifying glass to focus all of that wave's destructive energy onto one single point. And over thousands of years, this focused energy creates incredible sculptures. Let's follow the life story of a sea stack. First, those focused waves relentlessly pound a weak spot in a headland, carving out a sea cave. If that erosion keeps going and punches all the way through, you get a beautiful sea arch. But eventually, the roof of that arch gets too weak and collapses, leaving behind that lonely, dramatic pillar of rock we call a sea stack. It's the whole process of coastal erosion, right there in one feature. So you might be thinking the ocean is just this big, destructive force, right? But here's the twist. It's also a master builder. For every grain of sand it carves away from one spot, it has to put it down somewhere else. And that process, called deposition, is how we get our beautiful sandy beaches. Now, the main player in all this construction is something called the longshore current. Here's how it works. Most waves don't hit the beach straight on. They come in at a bit of an angle. This pushes water and sand sideways along the shoreline. You can literally think of it as a river of sand flowing just offshore, constantly on the move. So where does this river of sand drop all its sediment? Well, imagine the coastline takes a sharp turn, like at the mouth of a bay. The current doesn't make the turn. It just keeps going straight, dumping all the sand it was carrying out into open water. Over time, that sand builds up into a long, narrow finger of land that we call a spit. But what happens if that process just keeps on going? If that spit grows longer and longer until it reaches all the way across the mouth of the bay, it can actually seal it off from the ocean completely. This creates what's called a bay mouth bar. And just like that, what used to be an open bay is now a quiet, protected lagoon. The ocean has literally built new land and redrawn the map. Okay, so we've got these two big processes, right? Carving away and building up. But that still doesn't explain why you get a rocky coast here and a sandy beach over there. The final answer, the true story, lies in the local conditions, the specific raw materials the ocean has to work with in any given place. Yeah, you can think of every single coastline as having its own unique recipe. What are the ingredients? Is the rock super hard granite, or is it soft sandstone that crumbles easily? Is the coast facing the full power of the open ocean? Is there a giant river nearby dumping tons and tons of sand into the water? Every one of these factors changes the final outcome. But there is one more factor. And honestly, it might be the biggest one of all. It's the one that can completely change everything over thousands of years. Sea level itself. That line between land and sea that we see on a map, it's not fixed at all. It has risen and fallen dramatically throughout Earth's history. And this process creates two basic kinds of coastlines. When sea levels rise, the ocean moves inland and floods the existing landscape. We call this a submergent or a drowning coast. This is where you get features like estuaries, which are really just drowned river valleys. But when sea levels fall, old parts of the seafloor are exposed. That's an emergent or rising coast, where you might find old beaches sitting high and dry, way above the water. And hey, this brings us full circle. Remember the Chesapeake Bay from that first image? This is the explanation. It's the absolute classic example of a submergent coast. It's not a bay that the ocean carved out. It's the ancient valley of the Susquehanna River that got completely flooded or drowned when sea levels rose after the last ice age. All the puzzle pieces fit together. So what could possibly make the whole ocean rise and fall like that? Well, on a global scale, it really comes down to three big things. First, glaciers. The more of Earth's water that's locked up in giant icy sheets on land, the lower the global sea level is. Simple. Second is seafloor spreading. When it happens faster, it actually pushes up the ocean floor, displacing water and raising sea levels. And finally, just basic physics. When water gets warmer, it expands. It takes up more space. So if you take away one thing from all this, let it be this. That line on the map we call a coast, it's not static. It's not permanent. It's an active, energetic, and constantly shifting boundary. It's a beautiful, complex, and ever-changing battlefield where the immense power of the ocean meets the stubborn resistance of the land. And that really leaves us with one last big thought. We've seen that coastlines have been changing for millions of years. It's a natural process. But today, with sea levels rising faster than they have in a very long time, the question is no longer if our shores will change. The question is how fast, and whether we're truly ready for what comes next.